All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Prime Radio, your number one source for Prime-related news and developments. It's been an interesting last 2 weeks. Didn't have a show on last week, but we're back this week. You may notice I'm not your regular host. Ken is taking some time off right now, which is cool. So it'll be me, your lovely host, Henry. Let's get right into it with the data. I'm sure you've all noticed that some data has been coming and going on the network, a little bit more than usual, especially a little bit more than usual going. So what's up with that? Last week, we noticed that, and a number of providers also noticed that a large amount of providers were essentially going offline for a short period, maybe an hour, maybe just one missed scan, something like that. And they were coming back with no data, which is obviously a big problem. That wasn't supposed to happen. So set the team to investigate. And what they essentially found was that some code that had been implemented a little while ago that was meant for cleaning up stale contracts, which historically, for those who haven't been around for a couple of years, which is probably a lot of you, for the longest time on these kinds of networks, stale data was a huge problem, as in you would have a contract, it would expire, and then the data would still be on your disks like 6 months later, a year later. It would just never really leave. So that was something we cleaned up a while ago. But what happened here is that there was a particular kind of event that could cause your provider to mark a contract as stale, even if it had just gone offline for a little period. So then when it returns online, it thinks the contract is no longer active, so it wipes it. So that obviously, once we identified that, which once we were onto it, was within 24 hours, we had fixed that code, built a new version, 1.6.3.2, and had already released that out to the network for everyone to upgrade to, which, by the way, you have all done an awesome job of doing. If you head over to the events discussion channel, we actually have some of the stats that we have shared of the overall provider breakdown of what version everyone's running. And I'd say about 2/3 of the total network has already upgraded to 1.6.3.2, which is the latest and greatest and safest version. All of the examiners automatically updated. We began those updates by recognizing which examiners were having their contracts enter or at risk of entering that state the soonest. So we upgraded those right away, and then rolled out to the ones that were not quite at risk over the day or two afterward. But overall, the examiners were the population that got to that version the soonest. But all the DIYs have also done a pretty good job of trickling in over the last week or so. I think especially making that note in the Grafana panels, if you are not on 1.6.3.2, it tells you to upgrade. And I think that in particular was effective. But just kind of putting it out there as a PSA, if you're not sure if you are on the latest version, take a look at your Grafana panel and it will notify you if you're not. And just go ahead and replace the SPD that you're running right now with the latest one from the website. And that is essentially the whole upgrade process. It's nothing crazy. You're not having to search around a ton of files. Just replace the new SPD from the website with, or overwrite the old one, and you'll be on the latest version. Awesome. Now, how are we kind of correcting that? So obviously the network shed some data, even though we did act pretty quickly. We were onto it within a couple of days of it kind of first showing up. When it started to kind of happen en masse, we hunted down the bug, corrected it, fixed the new build. So we managed to kind of minimize the damage. But obviously we did lose about 300 to 400 terabytes on the network. Virtually all of it was testing data, so kind of left over from a lot of the tests that we had been doing either internally or some of our partners over the last year or so. So we aren't too concerned about the integrity of the data itself. However, I think it's fair to say that you guys all earned it by being online and being available, by being good providers. I think you had kind of earned that data, so we are already underway to replenishing that data, which is an effort I think I'll go a little bit into a bit later, but because it's connected to some other testing that I'll get to in a moment. But essentially, we are aware of and able to calculate using the telemetry. We are able to compile lists of who lost data and how much data was it, and we intend to replace essentially all of it, which is a process that we started. So a couple days ago, we started with our first Examiner customers. If you have an Examiner and you did lose some data, hopefully you'll notice either already or over the next couple days, your bandwidth usage should be much higher than typical. And that's because we are kind of seeking you guys out and replacing the amount of data either very close to or exactly the amount that you lost, which we're able to do now, some of the breakthroughs that we've made with relayer provider selection and that kind of thing. So what was I alluding to earlier about some of the relayer testing? So this is an effort that I think is pretty awesome. So a little bit of context or backstory. Toward the start of the year, pretty near to when I had just first kind of joined the team, we got the awesome assignment of testing the relayer on a pretty powerful computer, something like 64 cores, 128 gigs of RAM, and in like some crazy data center, like 50 gig or 100 gig networking, and just kind of seeing what was the relayer capable of, what was the upper ceiling, what broke first. We tested out a bunch of different configuration settings and kind of profiled the performance. And that gave us a ton of really useful kind of insight into the performance characteristics. And we were able to kind of profile some of the different config options, which became really helpful and kind of the basis for a lot of the advising that we give out now. However, as we approach closer to kind of a very full release of the relayer, which I suppose in some ways we have already done, but it's not a kind of binary. It is not launched one day, it is launched the next day. We've kind of introduced some of this coupon system. The relayer came out on Windows first, Linux now. We're exploring some different options using Docker to see some different configs. So where I'm going with all this is that we see the need to not just do very high-end relayer testing of like, okay, if you have a supercomputer, what kind of numbers can you hit? We're now more interested in if I have a 1 gig network, how many cores, how much RAM, what kind of SSD might I need in order to fully saturate that? So we're now, I don't want to call it low-end testing because I think it's a lot of the people are still wanting pretty reasonable use cases. I don't think people are expecting to run it on a toaster, but more realistic use cases, I suppose. So some of our internal guys, Jay and Henrik, they are conducting and approaching a pretty methodical series of tests that kind of standardized tests. So some of it is on the same hardware but different settings, seeing how it performs. Some of it is the same settings but different hardware, seeing how it performs. And all the way kind of from the very low end, like probably 2 or 4 cores and very little RAM, just to kind of see, does it run, what happens, all the way up to a lot more reasonable and performant configs. So that will be able to give us really good ammunition for being able to advise people what are reasonable kind of bottom end specs. If you are on a home network, what kind of computer can you get away with? If you're on a more business or enterprise network, then what kind of options will you be needing to look at? So all of this, it's no secret that as we perform these tests, we are uploading data to the network that goes out to you guys. So it seemed like a very good opportunity to kind of combine some of these efforts and two birds with one stone. So hopefully we'll be uploading a fair bit of data to the network over the next week or two. We'll be getting really good information from those tests that we'll be compiling into some videos, some white papers, some kind of reports that will hopefully make its way out to the public and for you guys, but will also be very enlightening for us internally, so we can help give the best advice possible and help guide some of our resources that we produce. Now, another major tentpole topic that I ought to be talking about this week. Some of you may have checked your calendars, and it is inching closer toward June 30th, which is awesome. That's for those who have forgotten or a little bit out of the loop. June 30th is the date for which licenses are becoming required to continue receiving corporation data. That's data from us. We are implementing a 30-day grace period. So that means if you don't have your license on June 30th, not the end of the world, you do still have a month to get that in place. Or even if you do have a license and maybe you're on vacation, it's not the end of the world. You do still have a bit of time to register your key, but that process is coming up shortly. And in fact, for a couple days or about a week now, we've been doing some internal testing for the license registration portal, and we're feeling pretty good about it. I think it's really cool how it works, actually, and I'm excited for you guys to see it. But we're now seeking some people to begin testing it for us, some kind of open testing. So if you're interested in doing that, if you're interested in being among the first people to register your license, and this is the important part, provide feedback and let us know if it works, if it doesn't work, that sort of thing. Not just, I want to be the first person to register my key and I don't really care about helping you guys at all. Then maybe don't take us up on this. But if you're interested in helping us out, then drop your name in the events discussion channel, and we may or may not reach out to you and add you to a special channel that may or may not be used to help test some kind of features that we're pretty sure work, like we're 99% sure work exactly how we think they do. But sometimes things, you can swear up and down that they work. When I tested them internally and everybody that tested it had it work, and then as soon as you release it to the world, the first person that comes back says, oh yeah, it's broken, this doesn't work right. And that can be difficult because, frustrating for the developer because they don't really know what to say. I mean, it worked every time they did it and every time everyone else tried it. But so anyway, software engineering is a challenging thing to get right, and the processes and approaches are tough sometimes. So we'll be discussing that a little more toward the end of the call. But before we get too far away from licenses, I will say that this week we had scheduled our first meetings with some of the people or candidates that are interested in setting up hardware integration platforms. So that would be Juicy, as some of you know, as well as Daniel, who's a community member that's been around for some time. So we have calls scheduled for them that were supposed to be this week. We've pushed them back to next week. But that, for those who are interested in kind of the hardware providing side of things, that should be very interesting. And I'm interested to see what kind of third-party or second-party solutions can be on the market. I think there will be an awesome opportunity for a ecosystem to kind of exist, and to get the ball kind of rolling on that. These kind of calls need to happen. So progress is being made on that front. Just thought you all might want to know that these guys, the people that we are kind of meeting with, we intend to give our blessing as long as they adhere to some reasonable kind of guidelines and aren't kind of scummy toward the community, which I don't think would be a problem for either of these guys. I've had the pleasure of meeting Juicy in person in Vegas. Hope to one day have the pleasure of meeting Daniel. And yeah, it would be interesting to see what kind of hardware ecosystem can exist for storage providing in a couple months. As well as one more thing about the licenses, the full licenses for the people who have purchased those. Thank you. Those are really do a lot to support us, and I think you're going to be very happy with what you receive. So where we are on those, the idea behind the full license is to get as close to the Examiner experience as possible. So for those customers, what we're going to make available, and as the kind of primary option for them, is we're going to have a kind of a Linux image that you can burn onto a computer, and it'll essentially be an Examiner, not just emulating an Examiner. It will essentially be just a home-built Examiner. The image that it's running will be very similar to the one that our Examiner hardware is running on, and this will essentially be a purpose-built, dedicated computer that just runs our supervisor platform to provide storage. But we understand that not everybody will be able to dedicate a computer to that purpose. So we are also having a kind of secondary option available a little bit later that will essentially be emulating an Examiner, but on Windows. So we're still ironing out some of the kinks on that. We're leaning toward using Docker, if that means anything to you. And the idea is that it will essentially emulate or get as close to emulating an Examiner, but within Windows, which will hopefully be a platform that is familiar or more familiar to a lot of people. And may need to sacrifice on some of the, or may need to make some concessions as far as features or hands-offness goes, because if anybody has run Windows for any amount of time, you know that sometimes it likes to reboot itself in the middle of the night and do all sorts of funny, silly things. So that isn't the direction that we're kind of primarily leaning toward, but we know that not everyone will be able to kind of burn an image onto a Linux machine and be able to dedicate a computer to running a full Examiner license. So we are trying out some options as well for those kinds of people. Let me just look at my notes here. Oh yeah, this was another kind of exciting thing that happened this past week. Exciting for me and for the team, but probably not something that you guys would have visibility into. But one of the efforts that I've been on for the last couple of weeks is setting up for the corporation, or like for our team, helping set up a cloud service that entirely runs on Exanet services and runs on the relayer in the backend. So this is something that I think has kind of been needed for a while. As Ken would say, it means that we're kind of eating our own dog food in the sense that we are fully committed to using our own services internally. So we have a kind of cloud front end. For those of you who it means something to, it is a version of OwnCloud that is a totally new rewrite that uses what's Golang based, and I believe a Vue.js front end, something like that. But the idea is that it's a totally new kind of cloud front end that you can plug into the relayer at the back end. It's really fast. That's one of the awesome things to me. If you've used some kind of self-hosted cloud software before, chances are it was either Nextcloud or OwnCloud, which share most of the same code base. And I mean, I've tried it, and unfortunately, it's slow. It works, but it is slow. It's kind of showing its age a bit. It's all PHP based. So this is a kind of ground up rewrite of that that you can host on your own hardware. And from the front end, it essentially works and looks, and you use it like Dropbox or like Google Drive. but it is totally running on your own hardware, and the backend can be running on can be plugged into a relayer. So you're using the distributed data center. So this is something that we've set up internally, and we're kind of switching over to now, which is really awesome, and I think is probably the start of the potential for some pretty exciting possibilities. So this is certainly not locked in and not guaranteed, but I think something that would be awesome is maybe 6 months from now, 12 months from now, we're able to include some kinds of applications with a relayer install. So it can either have a streamlined or potentially kind of bundled install for some of these cloud options or different application options. So just kind of in one streamlined experience, you can set up a relayer, you can set up the front end or the application that you plan to use with it, and you can be kind of off the ground going in just a matter of minutes. I think that's a really awesome direction to kind of be able to head toward. And this is kind of how that sort of thing was started. So pretty happy about that. One other effect of us kind of moving to this new platform internally is that we'll be able to host a lot of our own videos. So I'd imagine that before too long, these provider calls and these provider meetups will, instead of being YouTube links, might also be uploaded to this internal platform, this internal cloud, and it'll be a link that you can view in your browser, and it's totally running behind the scenes off of a relayer and served to you over the internet. I think that would make a lot of sense for something to transition toward, as well as a lot of kind of shout out Jeff and Sparky, a lot of the instructional videos that some of the community members have been putting together and some of our support team have been putting together. I think that makes a lot of sense that some of those videos as well become the kind of thing that we can serve using our own network. So stay tuned for that. I'm pretty excited for what's possible. I think it'll be really cool. I think it'll work well. So I'm excited. All right, now I would like to invite up to the stage another team member, Bob. Let me find you on the list here. So you all should have met Bob in some of the previous calls. There he is. He's a team member with some deep experience in technology kind of leadership and management, and he is on board today to discuss some of the engineering initiatives that are taking place on our team right now. How are you doing today, Bob?
Hey, Henry, I'm doing great. Thanks. I'll just go ahead and jump in. Henry, first of all, great job filling in. You did a fantastic job giving us an update on a pretty tough couple weeks. And I know from a provider perspective, it was tough. I think what everyone should know about, like, the behind the scenes, this team, which I know is impressive. So when you have an issue like this that you know is impacting some of the most important people to our project, the providers, you should know that this team is very focused. The ability to understand the system and be able to dive in and cross-team collaboration to work through and find an issue. The team's all on different time zones for the most part, and I'm so new, so I can help much. I said I was in some of the channels saying, hey, if I can help, let me know. But I think what you need to know out of the issue, and Henry mentioned it, within a couple days we really had a pretty good handle on it. And then being able to see the team work through, like, okay, what's the impact? What's the data? How do we recover this? What do we, and then of course you're seeing Ken communicate well, because he always does, right? So he's putting out notes to the community as well. So just great for the team. That kind of segues to what I want to highlight today. So we talk a lot about customer-centric business outcomes. So Henry highlighted some of those. Ken does almost every time we're on a call, right? He talks about the vision of where we're heading and the clarity of that vision. Another place you find kind of that customer vision is the white paper. There's a ton of information in the white paper that sets out understanding and definition, especially about the product and how it's supposed to work, just the whole dynamic. One of the things we don't talk about as much is engineering excellence. And to be able to meet that customer outcome, customer-centric business outcomes and engineering excellence is like two sides of the same coin. And so what you'll see us talk about a little bit more in the coming kind of meetings and weeks and months is highlighting that engineering excellence, because that's what provides the success of the customer in this dynamic that we're building to be able to sell storage in a decentralized way, right? So I just want to highlight a few things that we're doing that's already being done or we're kind of advancing related to engineering excellence. And it really has to do with this, we're building a world-class, stable, reliable, available, secure, technology, service. And so we need to be able to continue to advance those things from an engineering excellence way. When I think about engineering excellence, I think it really does, it's not something behind the scenes. It is about the customer experience. And that's why I keep saying like customer centric. We need to continue to understand how our customers will leverage those tools and what that experience is and build the value into that stream. So even as it relates to providers as, customers, but you're internal, you're like with us in this. We want that experience to be world-class and stable. And so those are the things that we want to focus on. Same thing with the relayer. And then as customers purchase our storage and how that works. Some of it is about creating the right culture, tools, flow. It's all the things that you would think about with engineering. It's learning, it's knowledge, it's that open flow of communication. It is DevOps. We've threw that around a couple times in the last meeting where we're just talking about continuous integration and planning. Most everybody on the calls is going to be in technology in some way, and so you're kind of used to that with whatever you're doing in your roles in technology. We just really want to be able to advance those in a organized and specific way so that we can build on that. This is value, right? So the customer-centric features and products that we're delivering, yes, that is value. The engineering excellence is just as much value. That's why I use that kind of two sides of the same coin, because you kind of can't have true value in our company without both of those. And that's why we're really starting to focus on this as well. What I want to talk about is, because that was super high level, and I am somewhat of a vision person that wants to talk about the culture of engineering excellence, but very practical. Our current focus right now is in 4 areas. And it doesn't mean we're not doing some other things, or, we are building a roadmap. We don't need to look that far out. We're a startup, but we've got some things that we can focus on. So there's 4 kind of key areas right now. We're improving our agile development processes. So this is product release, team reviews. We started those the last couple of weeks, and the team was already doing some of these things. We've just kind of formalized some of those, right, in conversations. We also, as we move towards a release, like the June 30th release, we're doing daily stand-ups just on quality, defect, bug tracking, talking to each other about the data and the metrics. So just some things that we're putting in place, agile development process-wise. The second area is DevOps. So we highlighted this last time. This is implementing Kubernetes, automating the build process, delivery process. It's definitely going to make things faster from a developer perspective, but it just increases quality. It's way more efficient, more predictable. That's what we need to be able to deliver features faster. The third area is code quality testing and quality overall. So we were doing code reviews but we need to formalize that a little bit more in all of the disciplines, whether it be front end or core or database, whatever those things are. Formalize the code review process a little bit more. We're working on test data and replication. And there was some early work done on the testnet environment, but we really need to take that and stand it up so we can leverage that for our automated testing as we get into, later in the cycle before we get to production. Also, user testing and feedback. Henry kind of mentioned that. I'm going to come back to that because I do have a specific ask around user testing. And then we're adding some unit and functional testing, which is just kind of normal in the process. So Agile, DevOps, code quality, and the last one is design review. So design review, Ken had mentioned this probably quite a bit over the last several months, where we're really focused on the core back-end development for quite a long time. And then we started to do some of the front-facing things like the UI. So all of a sudden now there's a front end group, and then the database group becomes more active with front end and the core. So now we're a cross-functional team, and there's need to do design reviews. Call it architecture, call it database design, and so you'll see us do a little bit more formal with the overall team, the cross team, and say, okay, here's the capability. How does it work? What do we really want to see in the future? How do we know it's secure, it's reliable, all those things? And so that's kind of the fourth area. Not to mention there's a lot of things in the backlog. Logging is important. Business intelligence is important. Henry highlighted performance testing, right? So a lot of things on the list for engineering excellence. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight related to engineering excellence is that everyone on the call, you are a part of engineering excellence. So we, as a team, service our customer. You're not really our customer, right? You're in this with us. You're providing the storage that we sell through Exanet services, right? And so we need your help to be a part of engineering excellence. So as providers, we can, as we provide that storage. And so where we need your help, specifically, this is kind of a next step. And a ton of you on the call already do this through the Discord. You help in, tenfold ways with a lot of different things. So this is just one maybe small specific way for user testing. We need some help with testing the pub key to license key, as Henry mentioned. And I would like you to, specifically go to the events channel and, go ahead and put your, however you want to say it. If, hey, I'd like to test, or some creative way in saying you'd like to help. I'm sure we're going to get some memes now about helping with test, and maybe I'll shout out to Buddha, Jeff, and Gord. I'm sure they're going to come up with some good memes to join testing. But you just go into the events channel, and what's going to happen there is Cam the Geek, otherwise known as Cam, he's going to go into the events channel. He's going to take everyone that volunteered in the events channel. He's going to take your Discord, and he's going to create a private channel, and he's going to invite you to that private channel. Then he is going to post, it's like 6 or 7 steps that you do to help us test the pub key to license key. In that same channel, you provide feedback. That's pretty much it. And Henry highlighted it. It's fairly straightforward feature and technology or features there to be able to test, but we really want a few more eyes on it before it goes live. It's so important. This is a little bit more focused on the DIYers. The examiners, you don't need that technology, or that's not coming for you until a little bit later. So it's really a DIY capability that needs to be tested. So if you want to volunteer for that, do that. We might use that same channel in the future to ask you to help with some testing. But I think the key is, in the testing realm, we need your help in that engineering excellence to make sure this thing is corrected before we push it out to the broader community, especially as we continue to grow. So Any kind of questions you might have for myself on that? That's all I had from an update of engineering excellence. It's been fun to jump in with the team and start learning, the systems and people and all that kind of stuff. Any questions? Or Henry, how do we want to handle that?
Yeah, well, if it's okay, I have a question for you. So you mentioned kind of toward the end there, but kind of as we start to grow, are these kinds of processes that we're putting in place now, are they the kind of lessons and changes and initiatives that are typical of a kind of small startup team growing? Is this the kind of initiative and process changes that are necessary for like a software engineering company to start reaching scale?
Yeah, I think, Henry, I guess I'll answer it. A lot of startups, they start out with engineering excellence. They don't really start with the customer-centric features. And you see everything is automated because you can't afford not to do it that way. I think there's a real balance the way that we've done it because there's so much value that's been built. So I think it's a good thing that it was focused all on product value and building it out that way. I think we do have a little bit of catch up on the engineering excellence side. And so I would say, yes, the time is now as we start to go to more scale and live to customers. The quality and the speed of engineering is going to be even more important. Think about it this way as well. As we're a team of, maybe there's 8 developers, who are coding. If we were right at this point, if we were to try to go to 20 developers, 30 developers, right? Let's say we got an influx of investment cash. That'd be really difficult right now because we don't have the full automation that we want. But we're pretty close. We invest in some of the test automation, especially the CI/CD build delivery automation, and some of these other kind of agile practices, just the things that I said on the list. We will be prepared then to take on more staff and bring them onboard them and be able to get to more scale. I don't think it's going to take us a long time, but we definitely have some place to focus.
Awesome. Yeah, I very much look forward to that day when our headcount is 20 to 30 and beyond. And I think on behalf of everyone, we really appreciate some of the work that you're bringing and the expertise to help us get there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I will open the stage to general questions. I do see Buddha Jeff is first in line to speak. I'll admit I'm a little scared to bring him to the stage, but we can all go through this together. Jeff, come on up. He's probably got pizza dough all over his hands. Can't get the phone right now. There he is.
Sorry about that. I was trying to do some work and had you in my pocket. I just want to say what a great job you did today. It's really great to hear your voice out there, and all the stuff that Bob said sounded really good too. I know the team does a really good job, and I agree with this. And we don't talk about it enough, but it's really good to keep go forward. I don't really have any question today. I just knew I wanted to call in and.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was everyone or just myself, but I lost you a little bit toward the end there. But I heard enough to know that it was very kind words. So thank you, Jeff. And we're lucky to have a community member such as yourself that has kind of taken on a role of pioneering some of the kind of setup guides, creating some videos together. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff. I did earlier see a question as well in a written question in the events discussion channel. Someone was asking do you think you'll perhaps provide an option for DIY to migrate to a dedicated host image? Or is that just reserved for full license providers? So that tool actually is exactly one of the ones that I kind of alluded to earlier to help the providers deploy a kind of exabyte image on a dedicated computer. So that is a full license thing. I haven't really heard that discussed internally anyway, about opening that up to kind of everybody. At this point, it is kind of a specific use tool to migrate everyone who has an existing provider set up to that kind of dedicated full license Xminer image. But perhaps, I mean, that is long term, perhaps the kind of thing that we could do. But at this point in time, anyway, that is just kind of a focused tool for the full license providers. Checking the audience now for any hands that are raised. Not seeing many, so I guess I'll take that as a sign that I did a good job covering everything. Or maybe just nobody wants to talk to me on my first show that I'm hosting. There we go. Signify Winter, come to the stage.
Can you hear me?
Hey, how's it going?
So I had a quick question. So will this image be able to be installed as a virtual machine, or will it have to be actual like bare metal install?
So for the like full dedicated image, that would be a bare metal install. The second option that I discussed a bit earlier, that would be kind of a more emulated approach. We're kind of leaning toward Docker for that, so it would be a kind of containerized kind of thing. Probably not a full virtual machine, but I mean, you can argue the semantics between containers and virtual machine. It is something along those lines.
I think it would be helpful if it could somehow, if the image would, instead of it being just bare metal, if it could somehow be virtualized, but I'm not sure how many people are in that scenario, but I know I personally am, so.
And if you don't mind my asking, what scenario is that? I mean, I can understand not being able to dedicate a full machine to just storage providing, but I'd be curious about hearing what your kind of setup is.
So I have 3 hosts right now, and 2 of the hosts are in one location, others in a separate location. And what I do is, for different projects that I'm running, I basically install a new virtual machine just to isolate that and just have it just be more clean from that perspective. So I take like my SC Prime, then I create virtual disks for that, for the amount of space that I want to dedicate to that. If it were ever to get filled up, I would just add more disks, more or less, so that I could scale up or scale down without having to physically change the hardware. But in my one specific instance, I have one hypervisor, one computer in a location that's running multiple virtual machines. So I wouldn't be able to, unless I added a second computer to that location, I wouldn't be able to dedicate bare metal, and everything's running on Linux, so the Docker option is not as feasible. I realize I'm one person, but I feel like there's more than one person out there that's basically running the SPD as a separate virtual machine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not in a position to be able to kind of commit one way or another today. Sure. But I do thank you for bringing that to our attention. I mean, this is definitely the right time to be able to say something about that. So, yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I'll bring up in the next product meeting that we have, and I'll be kind of inquire to see, can we do it that way? And hopefully we'll have an answer for you before too long.
And I mean, I don't know what base operating system you'd be using, but I really just use Ubuntu and Fedora. So if you use that as a starting point, I mean, you can basically virtualize that at any point. Then if you have your services that are running separately on there, however that is, I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be impossible. So, I mean, I feel like the virtualization within like the KVM realm is pretty agnostic to anything. So, thank you.
Yeah, cheers. Probably not the last time we'll have that discussion, but yeah, thanks for starting it.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, Shim Slady, come to the stage. I will say, I met this man in Vegas, and if I recall correctly, he drove several days to get there, stayed for one day, hung out, cool dude, and then drove several days back, which I think is one of the most baller moves I've ever seen.
30-something hour drive. I don't remember exactly. It was about 5,000 miles all said, but I don't know. Something
Kentucky
like that. But anyways,
is in the house. Yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So I just wanted to ask a couple questions about, and good thing you're on for this meeting because this is probably more you focused, I guess. You know the answers to this, but I know previously been mentioned about the idea that there be this kind of grace period at the beginning of, when somebody first announces, as far as, because sometimes you experience downtime with port issues until you get that all worked out and whatnot. So kind of a two-part question here. One, at the beginning, is that something that's been implemented yet? Not necessarily that it affect me right now, but and then the second part of that would be, I recently yesterday actually had a little bit of downtime because I was rerouting, power to servers and stuff like that. So I missed two scans at different times of the days. It called me offline. But I noticed that on a provider, it doesn't show any period downtime whatsoever. Is there some kind of grace period as far as missing one, a single scan or something like that too? Because I thought that was a little bit different.
Yeah, I'll answer that question first. So we are kind of continuing to refine how we interpret some of the data that our scanners return to us. So I believe where things are now, we have made it so if you miss just one singular scan, but then you come back online like right after, we'll kind of make the generous assumption that it was a false positive. I mean, every once in a while, sure, a packet is just kind of dropped for no explainable reason. So yeah, how things are now, you can miss, I think, one, maybe two, but don't push it, scans. And then if you come back online right after, we'll just assume that it was kind of something funny happening in between and maybe you were actually online that whole time. But any longer than that, then we do start to count up the downtime. Now, the first question, man, I don't even have the excuse of being old. I can't remember it. What was the first question?
It was about new providers coming online. There was talk about maybe a 7-day grace period or something like that to get it operational, because people having issues starting out sometimes. Starting out with
that's right.
Port, right?
Yeah. So one of the ways that we've kind of approached that with the new 1.0 UI, one of the kind of changes that we've made or refinements is now on the Examiner when you go to set it up for the first time, using the totally new 1.0 UI, which I think is either just starting to ship or maybe already has. Not totally certain, but I do know that one of the changes that we're making with that is that you actually set up all the ports and configure everything first. And then your Examiner is kind of in a limbo where there's a big button that basically says announce, like for the first time. So you have all the time in the world to set up your ports, access your Examiner, kind of have all that in place before you announce for the first time. And it'll kind of say in big letters, like, announcing, I can't go back from this. Like once you click announce, you start getting tracked, but you can stay in that state for as long as you want, where you haven't announced for the first time yet. For DIYs, I also know that we had some discussions, I think in public and internally, about implementing some kind of grace period, like 7 days or something like that, because we understand that it's not a very nice start to your storage providing experience if you like announce for the first time and then run into all sorts of port problems and maybe you don't get them solved for 2 or 3 days, and then you're starting your storage provider experience with like 20% uptime, which is kind of pathetic. But it's just kind of discouraging, and it feels like an uphill battle right from the start. So I can check in with our telemetry guy, Rhinus, to kind of see how where that is today. I don't know off the top of my head what kind of infrastructure we have in place for kind of forgiving or giving a grace period for the first couple days after startup or after setup. But that is something I know we got a ways in a discussion. But yeah, I'm not sure where it left off.
All right, thanks for the feedback on that. Yeah, I was just speaking in reference to back when I originally started my first instance, I had that sort of thing happen. I started it up, checked all the ports and everything, and then announced, and it said it was online. So I headed out for the day, and I came back, and it said, "Hey, guess what? You've been down for 10 hours." So yeah, it was an uphill climb for a while there, but as long as you understand averages and whatnot, no big deal. So thank you.
Yeah, actually, one of the support leads just posted in the channel that he's pretty sure that a grace period has been implemented of 10 days.
Nice. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers. All right, unless there's any last burning questions, might be toward the end of today's meetup. Hope you're all having an awesome day, and thanks for coming out, of course. We really appreciate everybody showing up for these meetups, and everyone who shows up in the recordings afterward too. Yeah, you can always catch us in the SC Prime Discord if you didn't make it today, or if you have any questions that you wanted to ask, or maybe your mic was broken or something. Yeah, visit our Discord. Someone's always there around the clock. Hang out. Talk storage providing, be inquisitive, ask about the relayer, ask about what we're building. We'll be happy to talk about it. And thanks for coming. Cheers.